studying as part of social psychology or clinical psychology, why have so many scholars around the world united around this concept of a positive psychology? So this is what I want to do today. In the year 2000, research was done by David Myers. David Myers from Hope College. Some of you who have studied social psychology may have read his textbook. Did research looking at psychological abstracts. And what he looked at was the ratio between quote-unquote negative research and quote-unquote positive research. And here is what he found from 1967 to the year 2000. This was around the time when positive psychology started. What he found in the 33 years are over 5,000 articles on anger. 5,000 research articles on anger. He found over 41,000 research articles on anxiety. And over 50,000 articles on depression. And then he looked at positive words, positive research. He looked for research on joy, and he found a staggering 415 studies. It does get better. He looked at research on happiness, and he found close to 2,000 articles on happiness in 33 years. Life satisfaction came out top, over 2,500 studies. Still, if you look at that, the negative studies versus the positive studies, the ratio that you get is 21 to 1. For every one article on some positive aspect, some positive element of life, well-being, satisfaction, joy, happiness, you get 21 articles on depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, neurosis, and so on. Ratio of 21 to 1. Very depressing ratio, I must admit. In fact, it makes me very angry and anxious. Studies focus primarily on what doesn't work. Mostly on what doesn't work. And this is not a new phenomenon. Here is something from Abraham Maslow, whom we mentioned last time, talking about this phenomenon in 1954. The science of psychology has been far more successful on the negative than on the positive side. It has revealed to us much more about man's shortcomings, his illnesses, his sins, but little about his potentialities, his virtues, his achievable aspirations, or his psychological height. It is as if psychology had voluntarily restricted itself to only half its rightful jurisdiction, and that the darker, meaner half. So, what does psychology study? I mean, the psychology concentrators here know that, and others probably guess that. So we study a lot of prejudice. We study a lot depression and anxiety. We study a lot about conformity. We study a lot about misjudgments and errors. Very much focusing on this aspect. And very little, again, ratio of 21 to 1, very little on the positive. And when I look at this ratio and I think about it, and again, this is 1954. Hasn't changed much since. And when I think about it and look into it, I think that psychology needs help. I really do. I mean, think about it on the personal level. What if you had a person who 21 hours in a day was depressed and 1 hour in a day felt good, or one day feeling good and then 21 days feeling anxious and depressed? You would say that this person would need help. And the field, I think, needs help. But then the question becomes, is it the right analogy? I mean, should we look at it this way? Because, the 21 ratio is unhealthy. Certainly would be so on an individual level, but it reflects reality in many ways. Because what we're seeing today, and there's more and more research showing that there is more and more depression around the world, that there is more and more anxiety, east, west, north, south. around the world. And one could argue, people who argue for continuing to doing research in this area and for doing less in positive psychology is, well, we should be doing even more than the 21-to-1 ratio because we want to alleviate the anxiety and depression that people experience. Today, depression is 10 times higher than it was in 1960. Now, part of it is because there's more awareness, because we measure better. But that's not all. It's also simply because objectively there is more depression. And one way of knowing that is that the most objective, quote-unquote, measure that we have is, unfortunately, suicide. And numbers have risen significantly around the world, not just in the United States, whether it's in China, whether it's in Australia, as well as here. The mean age for depression today is less than 15. Kids at a very young age are introduced to the information highway. And very often they're not prepared, not able to deal with it in an effective way. So when we look at this data, we say we do need more research.